of Heartbreaks, Inhumanities, Triumphs, The Journey of a Boy Who Refused to Break, by Henry I. Preface, The Debt of Silence. This book begins with names I can speak and names I will never know. It begins with my children, my father, my grandmother, my brothers, and the people whose love kept some part of me alive when the world tried to strip me down to breath and bone. But it also begins with the 500 who did not pass through the gate, and with the thousands beyond my camp whose stories were swallowed by borders, governments, silence, and time. For most of my life, I believed silence was protection. I wanted my children to inherit ordinary mornings, laughter, school, music, and safety, not hunger, landmines, rifles, camps, betrayal, or the smell of death in the jungle. I thought that if I buried the darkest parts of my story, I could spare them from its weight. But silence does not disappear. It waits in the body, in nightmares, sudden anger, distance from the people we love, and the tightening of the chest when memory returns without warning. I understand now that truth, offered with love, can become a bridge where silence once stood like a wall. I was born on Tomb Sweeping Day, a day steeped in superstition and shadow. Before I had any power to choose my own meaning, I was called a debt-collecting ghost, a karmic drain, a mistake, a child blamed for a debt he did not create. I grew up in the cold geography of rejection, survived the Khmer Rouge, watched my father die without dignity, crossed minefields and borders with a body that could barely breathe, and arrived in America carrying both hope and wounds I did not yet know how to name. This memoir is not written to decorate suffering. It is written because to witness is to bear responsibility. I write for my children, Justina and Justin, so they may know the man behind the father, the boy who kept standing when the dirt seemed ready to claim him, the refugee who carried wounds into America, and the imperfect parent who tried to turn fear into protection. I write for my father, the lion, whose honor survived even when his body did not. I write for my grandmother, whose lesson of endurance, the blade above the heart, became the invisible armor I carried through the worst of history. And I write for those who cannot write back. The dead do not ask for elegance, they ask not to be erased. If this book carries any purpose beyond my own healing, let it be this: that the nameless are named by memory, that the abandoned are gathered by witness, and that the boy who survived does not mistake survival for ownership of the story. I lived in part because others did not. That knowledge is the deepest debt I carry. What follows is not a perfect memory. Trauma does not preserve life in neat order. It leaves fragments, echoes, images that return with the force of weather. A tree trunk against my back, my father's trembling hands, the taste of raw noodles, the sound of helicopters and gunfire, the faces of children whose names disappeared before the world learned to say them. I have written these pages as faithfully as memory, conscience, and love allow. For decades, I carried the debt of silence. This book is my payment. It is the testimony of a boy who was told he should not exist, who walked through inhumanities and still reached for tenderness, who failed and loved and tried again. I am no longer only the child named as a burden or the refugee betrayed at the threshold of America. The debt-collecting ghost is finally paid. This is my truth. I am finally ready to speak. Before that testimony begins, I must pause to honor the hands that carried me when my own strength failed, the living, the lost, and the unknown souls whose kindness became part of my survival. No life is carried by love alone. It is also carried by the kindness of those who step forward when the world has turned away.